Right now, we're standing on the grounds of the historic Sackville Street School, now Inglenup Community School. And this was the home at one time of Thornton and Lucy Blackburn. Their home was out in the schoolyard. And I found an archaeological site here in 1985, which was the first underground railroad site ever dug in Canada. The home of Thornton and Lucy Blackburn, who started Toronto's first taxi business. It changed my life. When I was 7 years old, I saw a movie on television. I have no idea what the movie was. It was probably something very sensational with Betty Grable or something. But I saw a movie on TV, and I said to my mother and my grandmother was elderly and she was living with us, I said, I want to be an archaeologist when I grow up. Now, my family was always a little on the odd side. They were very bright, never had a lot of money, read interesting books, and did cryptic crosswords together. And about 6 weeks later, I came home from school, and on the dining room table was this big wooden crate. And it was filled with books. And it was every Book of the Month Club selection that had the word archaeology in the title. They ordered every one. And I was, of course, expected to read them all and discuss this at the dinner table intelligently. They were very adult books, most of them, but I did make it through them by the time I was about 15. I started in boarding school when I was I think I was 11, maybe 12, when the school moved to Oakville and my family were in Markham and there was no way I could go on a daily basis. So it was a wonderful experience actually, because most of the girls I went to school with are still in touch with me, and I was an only child and from a broken home later on. So those are the closest thing to sisters that I have in the world, and I'm very close to several of the women I went to school with. I graduated from St. Mildred's Blackburn School in 1974, so that was in grade 12, and then I did summer program at Wilfrid Laurier and entered Laurier in the archaeology program, but I started out as a Near Eastern archaeologist. Because I had Latin from my high school, I ended up changing into classical archaeology with a double major in English. And then when I graduated from there in 78, I went to Israel to work on an archaeological dig at Caesarea Maritima, and came back and started a master's degree in classical studies at McMaster University. I finished my education at that point, and went into doing archaeology in the field anywhere that I could get somebody to hire me, which meant that I worked as a secretarial temp in Toronto on occasion. I worked for the College of Physicians and Surgeons. I did a whole lot of different kinds of jobs to get enough money so I could go back and forth to Europe and the Middle East to work on digs. And I ended up working in France a great deal. I worked at Orleans on cemeteries and buildings that were destroyed when St. Joan of Arc came in to lift the siege. I worked at a place called La Charité-sur-Loire, which was the first daughter monastery of Cluny, a monastic center in central France that started in 1066. Fascinating, fascinating history. And then I ended up out of work in downtown Toronto again in 1981, and I was looking for a job, and there was a picture in the Toronto Star of the monument at Fort Rouillé, the site of the French trading fort for Toronto, down at the foot of Dufferin Street in the exhibition grounds. In the 80s, we were digging forts and the homes of what I call the rich, famous, and military, people who were famous figures in Canadian history. And my interest has always been in the lives of the people who were the so-called ordinary people.
Thornton Blackburn could not read, nor could he write, neither could his wife Lucy. So we have no actual documents pertaining to Lucy and Thornton directly. There's no letters, there's no correspondence, for instance. It's very hard to pick up the threads.
It really did intrigue people, and was story after story after story about the Blackburns and about the cab business. We even had the cover of Taxi News, which I thought was a real coup in August of 1985. I think the whole concept of social justice came from my mother, my grandmother, and my father. My grandmother was a tremendous influence, my mother's mother, because she lived with us. And she was a very brilliant woman who had been very engaged in social justice all her life. She actually was one of the people who protested the internment of the Japanese in the Second World War, one of the very few people who were engaged in protesting that injustice. My mother taught in the inner city. She was forever engaged in helping children and families who were very very disadvantaged circumstances. My father was one of the vice presidents of the Polish Legion in Toronto, and of course always working to do good with the Legion circumstances if some of the veterans' families had hard times. We always had somebody sleeping in the spare bedroom. He needed a place to go and an extra place set at the table. This was very much part of what we were. I think pretty much in our household, if you weren't doing something that was doing good in society, you were considered a waste of skin. I have been tremendously fortunate in the people with whom I have worked and studied over the course of my career. In 1989, 4 years after finishing the Blackburn dig, I had been working with the Ontario Black History Society right from the very beginning. In fact, they supported the dig in very significant ways, the organization. But Dr. Daniel Hill, who was the Ombudsman for Ontario, was also the founder of the Ontario Black History Society with his wife. And I went to him and said, look, there's a grant that I really would like to apply for Multiculturalism Canada. And he said, well, Karolyn, I can't write you a letter of reference because I don't know you that well. I have never worked with you. We know each other socially. But I think you should go see Jim Walker at Waterloo. And Dr. James St. George Walker is one of the top race relations historians in this country. He said, Karolyn, you need to get more background in African Canadian, African American history. You need to understand the cutting edge questions that are being asked by scholars now in order to write a book about the Blackburns that will be significant and be meaningful. And he talked me into it. I was 39 years old when I started my PhD. I spent 7 years of my life at Waterloo. I finished my PhD when I was 47 years old, and it was the best thing I ever did for myself. The night that I found out that I'd won the Governor General's Award for I've Got a Home in Glory Land, the book about the Blackburns that took me more than 20 years to write, I came down here at 11 o'clock at night. I drove down from Collingwood, and I came here to tell the Blackburns. This is the story of a fugitive slave couple whose actions and the actions surrounding their escape to Canada. In terms of choosing teaching as an option, I must say that teaching has always been part of what I do. I did archaeology with kids and students and graduate students, and now I'm doing primary research programs with students and graduate students at the university level. I've always found that the key to learning is for students to be given the tools to teach themselves. And I think that's what I do for them. It's always engaged learning. It's always the current buzzword is action research. Well, I've been doing action research for 30 years. It's all about having the students enter into the process of inquiry themselves. Two of my third year students from a couple of years ago, they've published in the York Pioneer, which is the oldest historical journal in Toronto. They published their papers in the York Pioneer in third year. So they're contributing to knowledge. It's always something real. Archaeology education, historical education, the students are always doing something real that matters. It's going to make a change in society because they did it.